Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Fiends podcast, where we discuss everything fantasy. I'm Stevie Collier, author of The Four Territories, and I'm here with my co-host, Andy Peliquin, author of the Last Fusilari series and the Queen of Thieves series, right?
Having a hard time with that one there.
I always get your titles and your subtitles mixed up. He writes about people who kill people and steal things, right? And I am also here with our guest author today, Tom Fallwell, who is the author of the Rangers of, Lorien series. And his book just came out this month, right, Tom? The Dragon Blood Throne, Book
Yes.
1 Legacy.
Yep.
And apparently it's selling pretty well, so that's awesome. And you're an indie author, right?
Yes,
Sweet. Good.
totally indie. I don't
So
even have a publishing company.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a difference between there's two types of indie publishers. You know, one who's an indie publisher, you know, they have their own publishing company, and then one who's just an indie author, right?
Mhm.
So, well, awesome. Andy, how was your week? Anything you need to discuss? Anything fantasy-wise?
Fantasy-wise, I'm trying to think. You know, I know there's something super important. We're going to circle back around to it, and I remember it. I hate it when this happens. You know, I've got these important discussion topics or these things to talk about, and then I get into the writing. You know, creating, and then it totally slips my mind. So,
well, do you know the Dark Tower series by Stephen King?
I'm familiar with it.
Are we agreeing that it's horror or fantasy or horror fantasy?
It is actually, I think it qualifies as dystopian.
Okay, well, I went and watched it, and I was disappointed. I've read the book. I've read the second book. It's so different. I don't know if either of you read The Gunslinger, but, I mean, this is the first time a movie's really ruined, or a book has ruined a movie for me. Usually I'm pretty open-minded, but there were so many differences. And also being an author, I can recognize tropes now. I can recognize beats, and I can recognize where the story's going to go. You know, and I can actually analyze these parts of a movie, and it ruins it for me. It just, I can't even enjoy a damn movie anymore, you know?
Yeah. No, I've read a lot of reviews that people were saying, oh, you know, they took this massive book, because it is a really long book. I don't know if it's 150, 200,000 words, something like that. Yeah. And they boiled it down to a 90-minute movie and failed to do the subject justice, because it really is such a large book, you know, like not only the length, but just the story that he tells, the world he's built is just so big and epic and sprawling. And then, you know, the movie doesn't really do justice. I haven't seen it yet. I want to go see it because it's
go see it.
Yeah,
go see it. I mean, you'll probably enjoy it more than me because you haven't read the book and you don't have all these expectations like I did. And you know, I was drinking too. Like, I had alcohol in me, and I still was upset. So Tom's like, "What have I got myself into?"
I haven't read the book. I haven't seen the movie. I actually have the audio book, The Gunslinger, but I never have listened to it. So.
Okay, so you listen to a lot of audiobooks?
No, that's why I haven't really listened to it. I find I cannot focus on a book being read to me. I have to read it.
Yeah, I have a hour and a half commute to my work and back, so it's actually more like an hour and 45 minutes. And I listen to books the entire time, nonfiction, fiction, you name it. It's the only way I really have time. So I get through a lot of stuff really quickly. Like, Andy knows me. Like, I went through every single self-publishing book out there almost, you know, before I haven't even published a book yet, you know, just because I've going through each step. So, but that's soon to change. But
yeah, that's what I had. I just signed a contract with a producer to produce the audiobook of Child of the Night Guild, the first book in the Queen of Thieves.
Yes, I want it.
I know. I was so happy about that.
Congratulations, man.
It's not going to be ready until I think January, because she's got another project that she has to finish. But that actually times perfectly with the release of the final book in the series, The Queen of the Night Guild. So I'm really excited about that. And this girl, she's got a really awesome voice, both for the narrator and the characters.
Sweet. And what's up, Tom?
No, I was just saying that's cool.
Yeah. And you know, Tom, here's a strange story though. Andy has he has a really cool audiobook for Blade of the Destroyer, the first book in the Last Be Sorry series. He can't get in touch with him. And it's like it just fell off the side of the earth. And I know, you know, it's a popular book. You would, if you're a, you know, an audio actor or whatever they call them, I would feel like you'd want to be a part of that. And Andy, you just can't get a hold of him.
Yeah, I think he might have stopped working for Audible Creative Exchange. You know, these guys, they sort of get their start with the Creative Exchange program because you earn less, so to speak, than you would working for a company like Tantor, where they actually produce audiobooks and they pay you by the hour. There is the option to get paid by the hour, but then also the royalty share thing. So a lot of people get started with ACX and then they move on to getting you know, or sometimes even starting their own audiobook production company because you can make more money like that.
Dang. And quick question: are you doing half royalties with this woman?
Yeah,
Sweet.
trying the royalty share thing.
Cool. And Tom, do you have anything on Audible?
The first book in the Rangers of Lorien, A Whisper in the Shadows, I did get that recorded with a guy, and it just didn't really sell enough, and I don't think he really wants to work with that again. He's been pretty busy too, but he has a great voice. So I just got that first book, but I've been thinking about checking out to see if I can find someone to do them all. I'm really looking for a way to get away from ACX and not have to be dependent upon them.
And why would you want to get away?
There's a local place here in Oklahoma City that is doing audio now, and I'm thinking about checking in with them.
There is actually supposedly a new company that is sort of the competition to ACX. I can't remember the name, unfortunately, but I've seen it mentioned in a bunch of writers groups that I'm in. This new
Draft to Digital
platforms. Maybe not.
That's the one here.
It's fairly new. Maybe it is Draft Digital. I don't know, but it's a fairly new service or platform that could be good to compete with ACX.
Well, how do you get it on Audible if it's not through ACX?
Because you can just upload an audio file.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like more difficult to do. Okay, yeah. Awesome. So let's. I think we should go to word of the day, or is that off? Is that off our little structure?
I don't think we followed the same structure 2 shows in a row. So let's do word of the day, Stevie.
I had looked at that structure one time, and you know what? Maybe maybe I am just a pantser, you know. So did you find a new one, or do you want to go
with your original word of the day?
Okay, so the word of the day, and we're gonna take it from a fantasy perspective, so the word of the day is flux, which is a noun, and it means state of constant change. And ironically, Andy and I both have it. Andy has it in a published novel, and I have it in a novel to be, and it has it's a plague. And great minds think alike. Constant state of change. The plague is changing the body, and for future viewers who are huge fans of Stevie Collier's novels, a little weird tip about me is I am actually the Black Death, a plague enthusiast. I love that era. I love that plague. I wish I had it. I just love learning about it. Y'all didn't laugh. I don't wish I had that.
Here's where I got the term flux from. It's actually another word for dysentery.
Is it?
And yeah, this is from notable cases of dysentery. The bloody flux is estimated killed more soldiers and sailors than did combat in the 19th century. Typhus and dysentery decimated Napoleon's army in Russia. More than 80,000 soldiers, Union soldiers, died of dysentery during the American Civil War. And it's called the bloody flux because it's like you empty your bowels. I don't know exactly how flux got that name, but it was called the bloody flux. And so that's what I was basing off of when I added it into my novels.
Already we're talking about poop on this show, thanks to you. It was urine last week, it's poop on this week. All right.
Hey, you're the one who chose the disease, the pooping disease, as our word of the day, Stephen. This one's on you.
Oh God. So, Tom, what works are you working on at the moment?
Right now, I'm co-authoring a fantasy novel with Aaron Michael Hall called Corintor Niusi, and it's kind of in the really first stages, so we ain't talking a whole lot about it. We're trying to get it to the point where we can start talking a little more and sharing some excerpts. But it's basically a fantasy tale about a couple of people who don't know, have been raised by parents that were not necessarily their own and separated, and finding out that they have something in common. And it involves, I'll just say it involves a big bad guy. It involves our two heroes. But the thing we're doing with this is it's not about destiny or being, you know, fate or anything like that. It's all about these characters making the right choice. They have to make they make their choices. They're
Okay,
not being forced.
Multiple choice. Okay. And you know what? Something I want to start doing with the Fantasy Fiends podcast. We do it every other episode, it seems like. But could you please, you know, pick one of the books you want to talk about, and could you just explain it to us and the listeners? Because I take it for granted that I study you a little bit before the show, but our listeners don't really know who we're talking to sometimes. And so I was just hoping you could pick a book and kind of just, you know, explore the world a little bit with us and give us a little taste.
Well, I'll go ahead and pick the newest book, Dragon Blood Throne Legacy. It's the first of a planned duology, basically, although I may also write a prequel novelette for it. It's the story of a young elven woman who lives alone in the forest with a saber-toothed panther that's called a Shadowfang.
Ooh.
And that is her only companion. And she has grown up in the forest with this cat all her life, but she has some strange cat-like eyes, and it scares people. But what she finds out is she is a dragon blood, and her father was a dragon blood, and the kingdom was usurped by a dark sorcerer who killed all of her kin and her father, and now they want her to become the new queen of their kingdom and get rid of this bad guy. So she's got to learn how to find the dragon inside her, basically.
That
very cool.
Is
very
the most
classic epic fantasy.
I was just gonna say that. I was gonna say if you want a book that's fantastical, it is something fantasy. You have a fantasy craving. You should pick up Tom's book. Man. So she's born with this large cat animal, which I'm sure she uses to hunt and fight with, right?
Well, she wasn't born with it. It actually, I don't want to get into too much detail, but she was 5 years old when she lost her mother, and I'm not going to say how, but she was alone in the forest at 5 years old, and this cat just seemed to appear out of nowhere and protect her. And so,
sort of a jungle book type.
So when the book actually starts with chapter 1, she's been 15 years living in the forest alone, and this cat's been her constant companion. It's a female cat named Morlock, and she's just been all by herself, and then she likes it that way. But now, all of a sudden, an eclipse happens. And there's a prophecy that says that when this eclipse happens, the dragon blood will be revealed, and she gets revealed. And now the bad guy, he knows she's there, and everybody knows she's there. But there's a young warrior who's a member of a group called the Fellowship of the Blood that oppose the High Lord Kargoth. And so they want her to join them, and she didn't really want to join anybody, but she didn't have much of a choice at this point. So it just kind of goes from there, and it's just there's got romance, action, lots of action. We got monsters being conjured up, all kinds of good stuff. So.
That does sound awesome. And Do you play World of Warcraft by chance?
I have played just about probably almost every possible online role-playing game out there.
Yes.
At one time or another.
Awesome. Well, I didn't, when you said it on Facebook, I didn't know if you're talking about MMOs or not, but that's awesome. That's great. You'll have to add me or something if you still play. So
right now I've mostly been messing around with Eve. So.
Eve. See, I can't get into that because you're in a spaceship and I feel lonely and no one's there to talk to me. And
actually, I find it I like to get out there and start mining.
Yeah.
And then slap on the awesome mix from Guardians of the Galaxy and just kind of kick back and relax.
That's freaking awesome, man. What a great idea. That's great. Well, when you said Murloc, I thought of Murloc from World of Warcraft is why I'm saying it.
No, it's Morlock, M-O-R-L-O-K.
Okay.
But, yeah, I know what you're talking about there.
Yeah. This guy knows his stuff.
Is there any relations to the Morlocks from the Marvel comics or the H.G. Wells novel, or is that just happenstance?
It's spelled different than the one in H.G. Wells. I actually didn't realize I had chosen a name that was so similar to the Morlocks in H.G. Wells, but there's certainly no relationship, and it's a totally different thing.
That's cool. I find sometimes that a name from another book, whether it's the name of a race or a character, it inspires something that I create in my thing. Like the name of the last Bucellari. Bucellari were the household troops in the Eastern Roman Empire in the 6th century AD. So they were the household troops, and the character of the demon, he was raised as a household troop for the full demon. So it was just sort of like an homage, as it were, to these these people, the Bucellari. So it's interesting to see what inspires the names or the concept sometimes.
Yep. I've got a story idea I'm working on that I'm doing stuff like that. It's involving a lot of Celtic mythology. I've only got started on it, and I've kind of put it aside while I'm working on this other stuff, but eventually I'll get to it.
Celtic mythology.
It'll be a modern paranormal Celtic mythological sci-fi type thing.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah. I don't think I know a whole lot of Celtic mythology. I know like they believe in sprites and stuff like that.
Actually, I'm using the stuff mostly that dealt with King Arthur.
Oh,
to an extent.
Awesome.
Not King Arthur himself, but that kind of a period and those kinds of mythology things.
Is there one book for King Arthur? Like, is there one single book that made King Arthur popular? With Merlin.
Probably Le Morte d'Arthur.
Oh yeah.
Was the one that actually defined it, but there was another one written called the Once and Future King, which also helped build the mythology. And
they're different authors, right?
Yeah, I've even got a short story kind of based on that stuff. So.
That's awesome. Well, I'm asking because I always thought the Three Musketeers was like just a bunch of short stories, but it's actually one book by Dumas,
Mm-hmm.
And I just learned that because I was at I love to go to these classic ancient bookstores in Los Angeles when I visit, and I saw this book. It was one of those books in the cases that you have to like have one of the old ladies come and open up for you. And I picked it out. I was like, oh my God, Three Musketeers! I have to get this, and it's just on my bookshelf. It looks pretty. I haven't opened it. I don't have time. But so Andy, Tom, why are we discussing villains today?
Tom?
Well, because Andy suggested it, but I guess because I got a villain in Dragon Blood Throne Legacy, and I don't just throw a villain in there and let him be big and mean and evil and not explain why. So I tend to give him a backstory as much as I do everyone else. And we get to, I probably don't do it as much as some would like, and I probably do it more than others will, but I tend to kind of explain how he came to be what he is.
Yeah, that's super important for villains. Villains are sort of my favorite topic. Well, villains and anti-heroes, I usually group them together in the same thing. I've led a couple of panels on sort of writing villains because it's just so much fun to delve into these things that create a villain. You know, like I am of the belief that all children are born innocent. That's one philosophical principle, that children are born innocent and they are sort of polluted or they're changed according to their environment, their society, the people around them, you know. And so if you start off with this assumption that every newborn child is totally innocent, it's a fascinating journey to see how they got from there to where they are now, where they're a total bastard or they're someone willing to kill or steal. So it's such a fascinating thing to chronicle that journey. And it can be one massive traumatic event. It can be hundreds of tiny little traumas. It can be it can even be something as silly as the callousness of the society. You know, we're a society that doesn't value human life. Your villain's not going to value human life, and it's not going to be that he's a bastard. He's just, you know, they're not worth fighting for. They can die, and it doesn't affect anything. So, charting that journey, that psychological, that emotional, that cognitive journey for villains is so fascinating for me. It's actually my favorite part of writing the books. And I will say that I always love one of those villains who are just bastards for bastards' sakes. You know, they, for whatever reason, you don't have to delve into their backstory. They're just evil people, and they're fun to write. But then, of course, they can't be the best kind of villain. The best kind of villains are the ones who have some sort of layers and complexity to them. That they're the ones that you have to write more for the discerning audience. Whereas if you're just writing, you know, an antagonist that you need, you just throw in a bastard, have the people, you know, the readers dislike him strongly, kill him, yay, happy triumph. But then the ultimate antagonist is much more layered and complex and developed.
One of the things I think I do in both the Rangers and in this Dragon Blood is the villain. You talk about how he grew up and what happened to him, but then you start showing that he's basically becoming mentally unstable. And that is something that I don't know why that I've drifted to that in both stories, but I did. In the Dragon Blood Throne, Kargoth is he's obsessed with hating. He becomes hateful towards everybody and everything, and basically blames the world for his ills. And so he gets to the point where he just no longer, like you said, cares about life or anything. And then he's so far gone, you can't save him. So the only thing to do is to stop it. So.
Yeah, definitely. Mental disorders, I know they get a lot of flack for people who portray them incorrectly, or because people portray them incorrectly, but they really are the root of a lot of the, not the villainy, but like, for example, a lot of the people who have in the mass shootings, there's some sort of mental disorder involved. Now that's not an excuse for doing what they do. The real problem is all the other things that happen. But because of this accumulation of factors, you know, you've got this neurological defect or these emotional disorders that are already affecting the way these people think and act and react and behave. And then you add on, you know, bullying and emotional abuse and abusive parents. And, you know, you add all these things together. And then, of course, you have this explosive thing that had you removed even one of those things, whether the person got help for their mental disorder or they were in a better environment or their family situation was better, whatever, if you take even one of those problems away, you don't end up with the mass shooter. So blaming mental disorders, psychological problems, blaming them for all of these horrors that have happened is wrong. But understanding that they play a role in them is, I feel, very important. I've been living with Asperger's syndrome, which is a form of autism. I was diagnosed 3 years ago, and so learning more about these different disorders has been super fascinating for me, and understanding the role they play not only in my life but in the lives of everybody. I read this study that said only 17% of people will not be diagnosed with some form of emotional disorder, mental disorder, something in their life. That's 83% of people in the world are going to be diagnosed with something, whether it's alcoholism, drug abuse, depression, chronic stress, and then of course all the various disorders that come with it.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding the role that the mind and the brain play in our lives is super important for me.
Yeah, in the Dragon Blood Throne, like I said, it dealt with hate, and Kargoth becomes obsessed with hate. But we also see that same pattern of hate evolve in the Hebrews, and what it leads to, what kind of boils down to me is they are able to overcome because they have hope, but Kargoth felt that there was no hope, and he just kind of kept growing into that. And it's not something that happened real quickly. It happens over a period of decades. So.
Well, I have a question, actually, for both of y'all. I'm quickly learning that I do not write really good villains. At least I need a little bit of help. And, you know, I would say I am humble enough to definitely ask a lot of questions. So here's my thing. Andy, you kind of stated it a little bit. I created a villain that he did not want to explain why he was evil. You barely see him throughout the book. Because once you see him, you're as good as dead almost. He's that powerful. And in 2 sentences, he gives away what he wants. He wants power. And he cares so little about the protagonist. He just wants what the protagonist has, that I can't give anything away, but he starts getting this from the protagonist. He starts getting this thing from the protagonist. And he says in one sentence, "Ah, yes, you're back home. It's so good to feel the power again," something like that. Is that not enough to show a backstory? Because I didn't want to show the backstory to my villain. I really didn't want. I felt like it was an old Pinky and Brain thing where, you know, the villain is going to discuss his evil plot, you know, or while James Bond has a laser going to his crotch, the evil villain will explain his plot, you know. And I can't really fix it because I would feel like I'm squeezing the wrong shape into the wrong hole, you know. And I want to make that evil villain like kind of what Tom was going to do. I was going to write a very short story or a novella on why his name's Zygor, why Zygor becomes evil. But do you think 2 sentences is enough? I mean, he's that evil. He doesn't want to explain his issues.
I don't think it's a set pattern that every writer must follow. Everyone's going to be different. And I've certainly read books where the bad guy was the bad guy. Nobody told us why. He was just bad, and it's still a good story. So
okay.
It's I don't think that's
it makes me feel better.
Necessary, but you know, it depends on the writer and how they want to tell it, and it also depends on what, I guess, some readers may read Dragon Blood Throne and think, well, he didn't do that right. So, you know, but
yeah.
You ain't gonna please everybody. Yeah. But
that's true.
I'll tell you, I have two thoughts on that matter. Number one, you need to know why. You need to know what happened to him to make him so desperate for power. What transformed him from an innocent child who was living life, you know, playing with the hoop and stick, throwing rocks at his brother, whatever, that changed him from that into someone who was so desperate for power that that's their driving force. Like anything that drives you, there's a reason behind it. So if this guy's motivation is for power, usually it's to avoid weakness.
Well, I know why.
Okay, good. As long as you know why, then you can write the character accurately. Now,
yep.
Okay. The villain, the main antagonist of Child of the Night Guild, I don't ever come out and explain why he is the way he is. There is a sentence or 2 sentences at the beginning of the story that says, you know, you're lucky that the Duke just hanged your father for murdering all these women. That's, you know, he deserved far worse. So that right there sets up the emotional trauma of this guy. His father was a serial killer, right? So that right there explains it. And then at the end of the story, after he's done all the horrible things to the main character throughout, at the end of the story, he says a couple of things that explains how seeing the way his father was warped his attitudes towards women and towards people. And it's really just these 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences throughout the book. But there's enough there for people who care about that to say, well, this makes sense, because I understood what twisted him so much. So just those, if you've got the 2 sentences there, just saying the power is home might not be enough to convey the reasons why. Maybe you need to do something else, some other way of showing why this guy is. For example, if the thing is he wants to avoid weakness, then show him being weak and show his violent reaction to it, his over-exaggerated reaction to this weakness, and his desperate clawing at the power to avoid the thing that he fears so much, which is being weak. And that will stem from whatever happened to him at the beginning of his formative years to turn him into this power-hungry person.
Well, cool. I really like that. I'm going to actually go back and reread it and see if I already did that without thinking about it. If not, I may have to add a little something. But sorry to take this on a different path, but
we're still on villains.
Still on villains.
We're still talking the formation of villains. I mean, I love talking villains. One of my favorite types of villains has nothing to do with people. It's a force of nature.
Yes. Yes.
For example, time. A time crunch just ramps up the stakes so much. The character has to get across the city, and there's no way they can make it. They have to free their friends before they're executed, and there's absolutely no way they can cut through the king's guards and break them out of prison in time. Time crunches, they up the tension, they make things so awesome. And it's not like you can do anything to fight time. It's just tick, 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 and that's it. So you've got, it's a really fun sort of a secondary antagonist, or forces of nature like gravity. The Night Guild series is about a thief who works on the rooftops, and she climbs this massive tower. That right there, she's not fighting anybody, but she's got to survive this huge climb. Or a book that I'm going to write in the near future is about a prison wall, a massive wall built to prevent tidal waves from destroying the land. And so these prisoners have to repair the wall. So in addition to the whole prison system and the guards and the fellow inmates who are violent, they have this massive wave that is beating against their prison that, that could kill them or could sweep them away, and, they drown. Like, using these things like forces of nature is so much fun to create these antagonists that are unstoppable in a way.
The book I'm writing, I started the outline today. I wanted the antagonist to be the plague.
Yeah.
And that's why I was excited you brought this up, because I didn't want there to be a single humanoid person bad guy. I wanted to see if I could do something else. And this is also the first book I want to have some heavy female characters in it. And Tom, your newest book has a female protagonist in it, and I asked Andy this question already. How was it like writing a female character as your main character, and do you think you did well at it?
I think I did well, because I've had women tell me I've done well. So that's
good.
They like strong women, and Delina is a strong woman. That, as a matter of fact, she's physically stronger than a human. So, but she has a determination about her that, like I said, she starts out, she doesn't want to be involved with all this, but she has no choice. But in revealing how determined she is and what she has to do to find out, basically has to learn, how do I become a dragon? And in order to do that, she's got to go on this quest. But she has the young warrior that she helps, Merrick. He comes with her. So I've got these romantic elements going on between them two at the same time. And they're having their own problems, because he's human. She's an elf. She's going to live, or she's an elf, and then on top of that, she's a dragon blood. An elf lives 3 times the amount of time of a human, and a dragon blood, as far as they know, never dies. So,
oh God,
he's thinking, how can she love me? I'm going to be dead in less than 100 years. So I just got all kinds of deals like that throughout the story, but it shows her strength, and I like what one person wrote. My alternate character Merrick does not overshadow her. She remains the stronger of the two throughout the thing, even though he has his moments. So I think playing role-playing games really helped me in that, because I've played so many games, and my greatest thrill in all of them games was creating characters. I spent more time creating characters than I actually played in the games.
Yeah. So have you ever had?
When I create a character, I'd always create a backstory for them and something, you know. So I think that really helped me a lot.
So you usually got on role-playing servers or something?
Not with any private servers or anything. Just like World of Warcraft, I had the maximum number of characters, and some of them male, some of them female, and then other games that I play, I do the same thing. And Star Wars, for example, I've got almost 30 characters in Star Wars.
The Old Republic or Star Wars Galaxies?
I got almost 30 characters in that one, and
man,
male and female, and just getting in with role-playing groups, avoiding the ones that think that role-playing is sitting around in the tavern.
Hello, everyone.
Talking sex, you know. No, that's not role-playing, guys.
Hey, that's...
So by actually role-playing these characters, I think I've learned how to play them in such a way that I could write a female character convincingly enough to make it a good novel, good story.
Awesome. That was a good answer. Yeah, the female character for me, I'm a little nervous. Going to a liberal university, I feel like I have to hit all these areas for a woman. You know, I have to make her perfect. You know, she can't have any problems. But no one's perfect. And in fact, the woman I want to write, I want to make her, I don't know if you've seen Black Sails. Either of you?
Yeah.
Well, there's this female character in there who's super gruff. And you know I'm talking about? She's mean, she's a murderer, she wears a pirate hat all the time.
Anne, yeah.
And I want her like that, but a little bit grosser. So she farts and burps and stuff like that. And I'm kind of nervous to write it, even though that's how I picture her. And she falls in love with this other guy who's actually the opposite. He's more feminine. And, you know, but it reminds me of what Stephen King said in On Writing. You just got to forget about what everybody else says, even your mom and your grandma, and you write what you want to write. So that's why I'm still kind of nervous about the female characters, though. Villains.
I think we've talked villains enough for this podcast. I'm sure we'll have it again, and I will wax poetic again. I feel like I kind of monopolized the spotlight on that one, so I apologize for that.
No, it's I think y'all both brought up a lot of good points, and I know it was helpful to me to hear from two people who write really good villains. And actually, I like the time idea, and I like from you, Andy, and I like the backstory from you, Tom, and I'd like to do something with that, or to delve a little bit deeper into it. So
very cool. All right, well, Tom, we've got this awesome excerpt from Dragon Blood Throne Legacy. Now, what character would you like to read, or would you like to be the narrator? You are the director here. Tell us how to do this.
Good question. I'll be the narrator, because voice acting is not really anything I'm strong at. So.
All right. So now, how many characters are we working with? We've got Delina, Morlock, and Merrick, right?
Well, Morlock doesn't have any lines. Okay.
So it's Merrick and Delina. Now, Stevie, you've read a lot of female parts. Would you like to read the male part this time, or would you like to stay the female part?
You know what? I'll do a male this time.
All right.
So I want to hear your female voice.
Yeah. This is gonna be just awesome.
Yeah.
Now, Tom, one of my favorite parts of this is doing accents. Does this character Delina have an accent of any sort, or do you just hear her like a normal?
I just hear them, both of them, really as normal in this particular case. I have characters with accents in other places, but not in this excerpt here.
Okay. See, when I think fantasy, I usually think sort of a British accent.
Yeah, I try to avoid that kind of a trope, though.
No, it's more like it's in my head, and
Yeah.
then and the writing comes out sort of a little bit posh, and then I have to sort of change it, make it more street depending on what I'm writing. But all right, very good. Well, I'll try to read without the accent then.
All right.
And I'm doing Morlock.
No, Merrick.
Merrick. Okay.
Morlock is the Shadow Fang.
Oh yeah. Okay.
All she does is purr and growl.
I could do that.
Yeah, I think Stevie can make those noises. She ain't a Chewy, dude.
I'm a Chewy though.
All right, Tom, take it away.
Okay, this excerpt is from Dragon Blood Throne Legacy. This is a scene between Merrick and Delina, and where it starts out with just Delina, and it's basically where she starts finding out that she's not safe where she's at anymore.
All right.
So Andy and I are in love. Oh, sorry.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
That's not professed at this point in the story. Adding a bit of salt to her stew, Delina took a taste and continued stirring as she tried to take her mind off missing Merrick already. She had never had a friend other than Morlock, but she found the handsome young warrior more on her mind than she expected. These desires were new to her, and she didn't fully understand why she seemed to long for his company so. Even though they had only been together for a few days, she realized she had grown quite accustomed to having him around. He was unlike anyone she had ever met before. What attracted her the most was how he looked at her, not with fear, but with admiration or affection. She liked it.
Mm-hmm.
Her thoughts were sharply interrupted by the sound of a guttural growl vibrating in her companion's throat.
What is it, Morlock?
She usually could hear or smell whatever Morlock did, though many times Morlock did sense things a little ahead of her. She sensed nothing now. The hairs on Morlock's back stiffened as the Shadow Fang's attention remained focused at something beyond where she now stood. Glancing in that direction, Delina saw nothing unusual.
Morlock?
Prowling past Delina, Morlock unexpectedly released a shrill cat-like roar, leaping toward the back of the cave. As Morlock landed on her feet, she turned her head one way, then another, snarling, as if searching for something.
Morlock, what is it?
Then, as if no longer alerted, Morlock relaxed and brushed against Delina's legs affectionately. Delina wondered what had gotten Morlock's attention. She had never seen the cat act so strange, but she trusted her friend's instincts. Grabbing her bow, Delina left the cave to scout around her lair, just to be sure. As she emerged into the forest, sniffing the air and listening intently, her acute senses detected the distant sound of running footsteps. Her nose recognized the odor of the one approaching, and a small smile crossed her lips as she crouched at the cave entrance. Merrick soon came into view, running hurriedly toward her. Delina was pleased to see him again, though he had only been gone 2 days, but she recognized the urgency of his pace. This was not simply a friendly visit.
Delina?
Gasped Merrick as he slowed to a halt. He bent over, placing his hands on his knees, breathing rapidly.
What's wrong?
Delina asked.
We must talk. There's danger,
He said between breaths. She frowned. First Morlock's strange behavior, now Merrick's sudden and urgent appearance. She gestured for him to follow her back into the cave. Once inside, Merrick shifted the weight of his longsword sheathed on his back and gathered his breath.
What's this danger you speak of? Did you tell others about me?
She asked with concern. Though he hadn't revealed her location, He had unintentionally exposed that he knew she was the dragon blood, but there were more immediate concerns.
You're not safe here, all alone in the forest. The sign we saw with the moons, there's no doubt the High Lord saw it too. He'll be searching for you.
She sensed where this was going and assumed a stubborn stance. I'm not
alone. Morlock is with me.
I know,
Merrick said with a sigh.
But I also know the Kargoth and his Black Guard warriors. Delina, Kargoth is a powerful wizard. He will use his magic to find you. You're not safe here.
A few days ago, she would have obstinately refused such talk, but with the dragon scar on her breast and Morlock's odd behavior, she conceded Merrick was right. She had never had to worry about the Blackguards before, being no threat to them, but things had changed. She liked Merrick, but could she truly trust him? Could she trust the Fellowship? There was no question she couldn't trust the High Lord. She had heard about his dark sorcery and wicked nature. Her quick mind analyzed the predicament she now found herself in. Her place in the world was changing, and not, she thought, for the better. Dealing with clumsy Blackguard patrols was one thing, but dealing with a dark sorcerer like Kargoth was another. She had lived in this place undisturbed for 15 years and did not relish the idea of leaving the place she called home, but an inner voice urged her to listen to Merrick.
I understand your concern,
she said.
But how can I know your people will not treat me like others always do, as a witch or demon come to devour their children and souls?
Merrick tilted his head, giving her a lopsided grin.
A demon devouring children? Who could think such a thing?
Delina smiled at his mirth, but she was serious. When people looked at her with fear, it brought a near uncontrollable rage up within her, remembering that it was such fear that had killed her mother and left her alone. People feared her eyes. She tried to hide her eyes when she had to go into town to trade, but often without success. Such instances had produced the fanciful tales about the Wood Witch.
Fear can lead people to do the most horrendous of acts,
she said, a bit of anger entering her voice.
The people I have known are a fearful lot. You're the first person not to look upon me with such fear. In fact,
she thought,
how you look at me is pleasing.
The Fellowship are not superstitious villagers, Delina,
Merrick said reassuringly.
We are the Fellowship of the Blood, pledged to find and protect the dragon blood of the prophecy, to protect you. That is our purpose. Why we've never surrendered to the High Lord. We've all pledged our lives to the goal of restoring the rule of the dragon bloods.
His eyes were pleading, filled with genuine concern for her safety.
We will protect you with our very lives.
She saw no malice or deception in his eyes. In fact, she saw something she had never seen before. She wasn't sure what that meant, but she felt the warmth in her heart, the flush of heat in her cheeks when he looked at her that way. She felt that what he said was what he believed in his heart to be the truth. An anguished moan escaped her lips. Why couldn't the world have just left her alone? She had been happy, just her and Morlock. Yet a part of her, deep inside, wanted to go with Merrick, to be with him. The dragon sign was turning her life upside down, but there was no way to hide from someone like Kargoth for long. Eventually, he would find her. And if he had killed the other dragon bloods before her, then he would most certainly not spare her. She sighed heavily, her decision made.
I don't like it, Merrick, but it seems I've no choice. Morlock seems to sense the danger as well, and I trust her with all my heart.
She looked at Morlock.
It seems we must leave this place. What do you think?
Morlock began a low purr and walked over to Merrick, brushing against his legs affectionately, to the surprise of them both, as if saying, I like this one. Morlock had always watched him carefully. and he was sure the huge Shadow Fang had simply been waiting for an excuse to rip him apart. Gingerly, Merrick reached out and rubbed Morlock's head, and the cat leaned into his caress and purred.
Thank you, Morlock.
He said.
I appreciate your support.
Her mouth dropped open in surprise. Delina said,
I've never in all my days seen her allow another to pet her.
She smiled.
That does it. If Morlock considers you trustworthy, so do I. We'll go with you.
Merrick breathed a sigh of relief. He had truly feared for her safety, but he also wanted to spend more time with the beautiful woman from the wilderness.
We should hurry,
he said.
There's no time to waste.
She gathered her bow and arrows, her knife, and some food and skins of water. She also packed her salves and powders and anything else she thought she would need. As they exited the cave, Delina turned and gazed one more time at the place she and Morlock had lived for over a decade, a melancholic sensation rising in her heart. With a final mournful sigh, she turned away and looked back no more.
Very nice. Very nice. I love that. The cat is so well done. Morlock. Yeah, I really like that. And Andy, your female voice is just on par. I mean, excellent. Excellent. I was a little disappointed you didn't go, oh, hello, I'm Delina. But it's all right.
No accent, remember?
Yeah.
I was thinking of going Southern Belle. Why, Mr. Merrick, I do declare.
Tom, I think he's making fun of us Texans and Oklahomians.
That's all right. Everybody makes fun of us.
No, Stevie, that's like
what they don't
South Carolina.
And what they don't realize is down here, we make fun of them.
Yeah, that's true. I've lived in both places, so I can make fun of everybody. Yeah. That was a lot of fun. That was a whole lot of fun. I always forget how much fun the readings are.
I would love to have done a nice big fight scene, but I didn't want to give anything away there.
Yeah, but I like this scene. I think you picked the perfect one to give us a real taste of your style and how the rest of the book's going to go. And I love the honesty in the narration about how they feel for each other. I don't see that a whole lot in books. I feel like the author tries to hide it more, but I like this, you know? It doesn't have me guessing as much, and I can actually kind of feel the connection that the characters are having.
What's really interesting, this was actually my first novel at one time, under a different title called Dragon Rising. And it was full of errors, completely. I didn't do like you. I didn't go study and do all that stuff. I just sat down and wrote a book, stuck it out, and found out that I didn't do so hot. So after writing the trilogy with an editor and learning all this stuff, and I just thought, I need to go back and do this again. And people were saying that they wanted to see a sequel. So I went back and rewrote it, added a little to it, and made a nice cliffhanger ending for everyone to hang on. Not really a cliffhanger, but just a little foreshadowing of there's more coming.
Sweet. And I know Andy and I have both also done that, where we both created something and put it to the side. At least Andy actually has it as a email clicking, so like people give him their email address for his first book, right, Andy?
Well, I actually totally, like, I've hidden it from the world. I've unpublished it from Amazon. It's available on Goodreads because, you know, what's on Goodreads cannot be disappeared. But it's not even, now for my newsletter, I use Blade of the Destroyer. Like, I'm really happy with the story of the Atlantis story, but the way it's written, it needs work. Like, the story overall, I like it. There's a lot of awesome stuff. It's this great mix of fantasy and sci-fi and historical fiction and all that fun stuff. But then to actually make it a product that I would publish now, I would have to sort of overhaul it and make it something much more, well-rounded and deepened.
Yeah, one of the problems I had is Dragon Blood Throne, and when it was first written, Dragon Rising. It's still, both of them are in third-person omniscient point of view, and in the first one, I really did a lot of head hopping. And so I really tried to cut out a bunch of that in this rewrite to the point. The story is really just the same, except I added a little more at the beginning, a little more at the end, and I really cleaned it up. And I try to do less. I tell you how Merrick's thinking, I tell you how Delina's thinking, but I try not to go back and forth constantly. Just, maybe start out the scene with what one's thinking and end the scene with what the other's thinking. So.
Yeah, that's something that's pretty hard to get into. I'm actually thinking of, like, this is my first time I'm going to write a multiple point of view character story. So it's going to be both, it's going to be a romance, so it's going to be the male perspective and the female perspective. It's going to be interesting to sort of juggle that, to use the facial expressions for the character, the character they're seeing to convey things, and then later or before, have the thoughts to sort of do it. So it's going to be interesting to juggle that. Yeah,
the current work in progress is third person, but I'm using a limited point of view. So I'm not, there's several characters, but it's all basically the only thoughts you get are what one character has. So.
Yeah,
I'm learning to do that in first person. I like first person point of view. That's kind of fun.
Yeah,
but you got to be careful.
Yeah, first person can be. I really like writing like a sarcastic character in first person. Or let me put it this way: if I write first person, the character ends up being really sarcastic.
like you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny, and he's posh as well, right?
Here's a new one for you, Steve. Poncy.
Poncy?
Poncy. Poncy. Yeah. It means like posh or pretentious or affected. They put on airs. Someone who's poncy. It's I don't know if it's from the British word ponce, which is it's what they would call homosexuals, but poncy, is that really, the snooty posh nobleman kind of character. I love the word poncy.
Poncy. I feel like I've seen that before too. So it does seem like a word you would really like.
I love those words that sort of make fun of the person that they're being used to describe, like whinging. When you say someone is whinging, it's like they're whining, but it's almost like they're like a child. So when you say a grown man is whinging, it's like, grow up, stop moaning about something ridiculous and act like an adult. So it's such a great word. And I've had a few people say, I don't think this word is right. And I'm like, go Google it and you'll find it's such a great word.
We need to use that on these politicians, don't we?
Yeah.
Whinging.
Yeah. Whinging.
Yeah.
Stop your whinging and go look up the word whinging.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we are running out of time. So Tom, why don't you tell our listeners and viewers where they can find more about you?
Well, the best place would be my website, which is very simply tomfallwell.com. I'm on Facebook. Just search for Tom. I tell you what, just go to Google, type in Tom Fallwell, author. I'm all over there. There's only 3 Tom Fallwells in the United States, and I'm the only one writing books. So I come right up on top of Google. So
sweet. That should be like your slogan for your website. There are 3 Tom Fallwells in the U.S., and I'm the only one who writes.
I'm on Facebook. I'm in Twitter. I'm here in Google sometimes, mostly on Facebook and Twitter. Goodreads, just all over the place. And I do my own podcast. So
that's right. That's where Tom and I met, and when I was hanging out with him on his podcast.
Yeah.
Now the tables have turned.
What's that podcast called?
Right On with Tom Fallwell.
Right on. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And it's
but with writing.
Yeah.
Fantasy and sci-fi authors, basically. Yeah.
Cool. Very nice.
That's very cool. All right. Well, that is it for today. Next week, we have the amazing Susan Darlene Faw. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. It's F-A-W. I'm going to say Faw. We can use it as the new word of the week, if not.
Yeah.
We still don't have a discussion topic yet, but she is an awesome fantasy author, and it's going to be a hell of fun podcast, like all of our podcasts are, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I'm not biased at all. So, also, please remember to subscribe and like. That really helps us out. YouTube's really hard to become successful at, And so a good subscribe and a like here and there will really, really help us out. We want to thank you for viewing, and we want to thank for viewing and listening. And we want to thank Tom Fallwell for being with us, and we wish him all the luck in the world on his upcoming works. And we'd love to have you back on, Tom, when you have a new release.
It'd be great.
Awesome.
Actually, what would be awesome is to get you and your co-author on, so we get like 2 authors for the price of 1. That would be
yes, fun. Yes, agreed.
That would be cool.
And then we could do a scene with like 3 characters, you know, talking, and even a battle scene. That would be awesome. All right.
Now she's very much better at doing character voices than I am. So
perfect. That's awesome.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening and viewing this awesome, fantastical episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast. And we look forward to having you next week, where we discuss a whole new awesome topic with a brand new guest author. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you next week.
Bye.